Presentations from visitors, guest speakers. We don't have any guest speakers per se. We'll do one under chairperson. So audience comments regarding agenda items. For those on the line, we've got half a dozen, maybe 8 people here, mostly staff and reporters. So, okay, I don't see anybody running up, so we will move on to chairpersons and representatives of boards and commissions. CCMC, is there anybody from CCMC on the line? About the school board? Okay, hearing none, then Prince William Sound Regional Citizens Advisory Council, City Rep Robert Beadle is here to give a report.
Go ahead. Robert Beadle, 609 Spruce Street.
Is that on? Yeah, you guys let me put people on the line. Thank you.
Testing. That was for Tom. Actually, I'm kind of sorry to be here. Things that are happening over at Valdez enough to get concerned that I wanted to bring something to the council and let people know. There's some things that are still in executive session over there, so I asked RCAC to give me talking points. Yeah, but I just want to let the council and people know what's going on. Prince William Sound RCAC is working with LASCA to review and assess what appear to be some serious safety and environmental concerns at the Valdez Marine Terminal. The concerns are mostly around snow and ice removal on the crude oil storage tank tops, an attempt to repair the damaged vents on these tanks. If you've ever seen a picture of them, they got vapor recovery system. They have a hard top on the tanks. In America, where they don't get the weather we do, they have floating tanks so that there isn't off gas. But since we get so much snow and rain, they have to put a solid roof on it. So they have to manage the gases depending on the level of the crude in there. Okay, you may have seen a recent coverage of these issues in the Anchorage Daily News. They had a couple different articles in there. Okay, many of the potential issues were brought to Prince William Sound RCAC by concerned individuals, and we are actively working to validate all information we have received. Prince William Sound RCAC is working these issues with Alaska directly, as well as communicating with regulators about our concerns. We believe this direct approach will be the most productive and effective way to promote change. You know, not go do a gotcha or come down hard on you, but work with Alaska to make sure things get fixed and changed. Okay, we're encouraging Alaska to use the situation as an opportunity to improve, learn, and make fixes. Okay, Prince William Sound RCAC will help Alaska in any way possible to succeed in rectifying these deficiencies for the sake of Alaska employees, the general public, and the environment of the region around the terminal. So there are some just concerns that safety hazards and things that haven't been up to code and stuff, and there was some concern. So anyway, RCAC is, I got a terrible cough, so I'm trying to get this cough dropper that keeps. Anyway, as things progress, I'll definitely be back and give an update and stuff, but it's kind of got to the point where something need to be said that they are having some issues over there that need attention sooner than later. So, and RCAC is working hard with the regulators and Alaska to get things back in order.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Any questions from council? On the line, any questions?
I guess just keep us posted.
Yeah, so I'm assuming, I guess, that RCAC or you'll be back if we need to do anything as a council as far as letter or resolution or anything like that.
And also to keep you informed that, I got concerned enough that it made me nervous that I figured I better say something, that, they're having some issues. Need to get them worked out and fixed.
Okay,
So, thank you.
thank you, Robert. Council rep here anyway, so we'll find out what the status is on that for the next meeting. The council, the consent calendar is before you. Anything you need to pull out of there?
Okay,
Move to approve?
oh, it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
moved. I was just going to go to the vote.
Roll call, please.
Yes, on the consent calendar, Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Kristen Carpenter,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Jeff Gard is absent, Kathy Sherman,
Yes.
Ken Jones,
Yes.
and Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
The consent calendar is approved.
Okay, our minutes were in the consent calendar. Consideration of bids, we have one. Council approval of contract award for city financial audit services. Page 10 in our packet.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move we direct the city manager to negotiate a contract with Newhouse and Vogler CPA to perform City of Cordova annual audit for a 3-year contract term for fiscal years 21, 22, and 23, not to exceed $262,344, with an option to extend for a 2-year contract term fiscal year 24 and 25, not to exceed $186,411.
Moved and seconded to approve. Would you like a staff report first? Maybe.
Sure.
So we did go out to bid, and we got 2 responses, one from the audit firm we've been using for a number of years, BDO, and another from a new firm, which is what this recommendation is for, is Newhouse and Vogler. All of the bids came in higher than what we budgeted, at least for FY '22. We put $50,000 for audit services in the budget. And the reason for that mostly is because we are now, because of all the federal monies we've been receiving, we are having to do a federal single audit, which is not a normal part of our audit process. It adds typically a third, again, as much to the audit cost. So cost-wise, I just wanted to alert you to the fact that these audits came in quite a bit higher. Newhouse and Vogler integrated into their contract bid all of their on-site costs, housing, travel, and everything. So their bid was over $30,000 less annually than BDO's. We did evaluate each proposal. We did reference checks with those that are using this new firm, and feel very confident that they can do the work in a timely fashion. We'll have that report. They'll be able to schedule the audit this summer as opposed to a yet unknown date by BDO. So with that, staff recommends that we do go ahead and go with Newhouse and Vogler. They're a new firm for us, see how they go. But we are looking for a 3-year contract commitment, and that's what's presented in front of you with an option for 2 more years.
Okay, Councilmember Carpenter is the maker of the motion.
I am going by the staff's research, and obviously they've been through the competitive process, and Newhouse and Vogler is a firm that I think has been around for quite a while, so I think they've got good experience.
Okay, Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, no, I just appreciate you going through the competitive process on this. I think that it is a good idea to lock in the price for a few years here, and especially with everything that's going on. Costs are raising everywhere. Yeah, I think that it should be a good thing to have.
Talk into the mic, please.
Oh,
Is
yes.
that mic on?
It is, Tom, but we'll maybe that mic isn't adjusted quite right. Yeah.
Check. Okay, there we go. Yeah, anyways, thank you to staff for bringing this to us, and I support it.
Okay, on the line, Councilmember Meyer.
No additional comments. Thanks. I'm in support.
Schaefer?
Nope, I appreciated the info that was included in the packet and then also the background given by the manager. So I am in support.
Thank you. Councilmember Baylor?
Yeah, I support it, but can you repeat that, why the cost is more? Something about federal dollars that kind of stood by me there.
Sure. So when you receive over a certain threshold, I think it's $700,000 in federal dollars, the federal government requires that any entity receiving those resources do an additional step in their audit called a federal single audit. And it's requires a little bit more due diligence, and it definitely increases the cost of an audit. And in the past, because we've not received federal dollars of the size that we have with all the ARPA and COVID monies coming in, we've not had to do a federal single audit. But at least for the next 3 years, we will have to.
So can we use some of that COVID money to pay for the added expense of receiving the COVID money?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, Vice Mayor Sherman.
So free money is never free. I'm in favor of this, and I'm in favor of a 3-year contract because I think it takes a while for an audit firm to kind of learn the quirks of each individual city. So I'm kind of happy about that. So I'm in favor.
Okay, sounds like everybody was in favor. Any last comments? Hearing none, then can we do a roll call on this, please?
Yes,
Susan?
sure. Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Ken Jones,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
Kristen Carpenter,
Yes.
Jeff Gard is absent, Melina Meyer,
Yes.
and Kathy Sherman.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Reports of officers, the mayor's report. I will have a written report in future packets. I didn't this time because I'm just getting things figured out, and attended a few meetings, tele meetings or Zoom meetings in the last week, but nothing that you guys aren't already all appraised of. We have the thing on Friday that the comments for the state budget that's coming up that I'm sure the manager will talk about. So I don't have anything further this time unless anybody has any questions, but in the future I will have a written report. Okay, Ellen, manager's report?
Sure. I did put a written report in, which I'm happy to answer any questions about if you are unclear about anything. But I did want to bring to your attention and to the public that we are putting on the full court press with the Senate Finance Committee to make sure that a $7.5 million additional request gets in the Senate Finance budget, which will then migrate through House and hopefully get passed and then get by the governor's veto pen. When we were in Juneau, we did meet with key staff on the Senate Finance Committee, Natasha von Imhoff, Bert Stedman, Click Bishop, and their respective staffs, all of whom indicated a level of support for a $7.5 million ask. We met with House Minority Leader Tom Begich and House Finance Co-Chair Dan Ortiz, all of whom again agreed to support and push. And then just last week, we spoke with 2 people in key positions in the governor's office, and they indicated support as well. So I think what we need to do now is just get out and demonstrate that it isn't just Helen and Curtis and others talking about the need for money, but it's our community. So there is a call to action that I sent out to all of you and to city employees. And Kathy Renfeld from the chamber put out a really nice call to action for the business community that is spreading around too. So it makes it really easy. There's a call-in Friday morning at 9 a.m. There's a phone number to get in the queue. 90 seconds is all you're allowed to talk, which is a really quick soundbite. So we do have some talking points in there, but they definitely encourage written testimony. So if anyone wants to write a letter, there's also sample letters in from fishermen, businesses, community members, to make it easier for you to put your good sense into that conversation. So I encourage everyone to do it. In my past life, I more than once had people from the Senate or House call and say, please make them stop sending letters. And it's like, no, the more we can do to really show how important it is to our community, the better. So I just encourage everyone to take a few minutes and show your support for an additional $7.5 million request for the harbor, which is all about COVID inflation. And we want to get this thing done. Also in my report, we are going to go to Anchorage. There's a whole entourage from Cordova going to Anchorage to be a part of the Senator Murkowski's infrastructure funding symposium. And we will be there in force to learn about and make contacts so that we can access other resources for Cordova. And speaking of resources for Cordova, we can move on to our South Harbor rebuild, and we do have two of our consultants here and Sam here to introduce, so turn it over to her.
You'd have
He
to
won't be
use-
able to hear you online.
You can use the handheld over there if you want, if they turn it on.
Okay, so here with us tonight is Mark Keller, the project manager, who has been here previously, and also Robin Reich, who is from Solstice Consulting, who's doing our engineering, environmental work. And so we are going to go through a little bit of a PowerPoint. It's going to be kind of ad hoc. We will have our pictures up here, talk to a few slides that are verbal, and then you guys have the printed copies of the conceptual drawings. They're out, and so we'll let Mark speak to that, and then Robin will talk about the environmental road that we have to go down. That's long and windy. Okay.
Do you have one?
I think I have, yeah, I've got these two, 6 and 7.
Whoever's talking.
Okay, so for those of you that were at the South Harbor Rebuild Project kickoff meeting a couple weeks ago, our secured funding situation hasn't changed much since then. We spoke about $32 million secured at that time. That's the $5 million bond, the $5 million state Tier 1 grant, $20 million from RAISE, and then the $2 million DEC Clean Water Fund loan that was passed a ballot this March. The only additional funding since then that we have secured, which is great news, is about $670,000 that we have diverted from our Pink Salmon 2016 disaster relief funding toward this project. NOAA has officially approved that different use for these funds, which is really good news. Those funds were previously going towards making permanent the Crater Lake temporary siphon and 3-stage dock repair. A little bit of it will still be used for replacing pilings on the 3-stage dock while we have the barge and workers in town to do that portion of the project. But our reasoning there was that neither of those projects required a major workforce mobilization, whereas the South Harbor rebuild does. And so taking as big a bite out of this project while we can seemed worthwhile. That said, our most recent cost estimate for the project is $42.4 million, and we have $32.67, which is a pretty big gap As Helen mentioned in the manager's report, our visit to Juneau went really well, and we're hoping the community advocates for $7.5 million remaining in the capital budget as it moves along here. Please do your best to get the word out about that and encourage everyone who you think would be useful to call in there. Additionally, the Denali Commission has $16 million in transportation funding, $15 million of which is a federal pass-through. That NOFO is set to release in April, and we're keeping an eye on that to make up other project funds. The other possibility is to reduce the cost of the project, obviously, and we're looking at a couple options for that. We are excluding an L float from the project as it was originally scoped in the RAISE application, and that's largely due to public feedback, both from the Harbor Commission and at the kickoff meeting. There were serious concerns about congestion that would be caused by that 6 additional float, which currently is not in the harbor. And so that seemed like a nice synergy of what everyone wanted and an easy way to reduce costs while making people happy. So that's worked out well. It would have required dredging along the breakwater and would have been a really expensive float for not that many slips. We're looking at shrinking a couple other portions of the project from how they were scoped and raised, including the drive-down dock size. We spoke a little bit with Harbor Commission about that last night. I'm sure Mark will touch on it more as we move through some of these conceptuals in detail tonight. Lastly, we have a slide here titled, "Why do we spend time on conceptuals when the design build team will provide different conceptual designs?" And the message we'd like to leave you with there is that we would encourage all of you to identify problems that you see with these designs and that you don't necessarily need to come up with a solution to those problems. That's what the design build team and our R&M consulting engineering firm will do for us. So if we can just figure out where there are issues, and the Harbor Commission did a great job of that last night, saying, oh, you're eating up our turning basin here, that won't work. This dog leg won't work because Cupcake won't be able to make that turn, et cetera, et cetera. So if you see any problems like that, speak to them, but don't necessarily feel as though you need to come up with the exact solution to the problem, because engineers can do that, and they will do that. So with that said, I will hand it over to Mark.
I'll take this one if it's okay. Yeah, maybe turn the computer so I can see the screen a little better. Yeah, there we go. It's nice to be able to be here and talk to the council in person. I felt like a disembodied voice the last couple of times we had communications, and that sort of felt uncomfortable to me. So now I can put some names and faces together with who the council is, and that's helpful. We have been working with RM Consult, who are going to be the review engineers once we get some design builders in contract for this, to try to figure out how we accomplish the various things that need to be accomplished, maintaining as many floats, as many slips as we can. We had a couple of issues with congestion, both congestion on the upland side of things where people are trying to use the boat launch area, and then we're going to put in a new drive-down ramp, and the service float for the drive-down ramp potentially was impinging on the turning basin. Struggled with that a lot. We've looked at about 7 different alternatives to try to come up with a solution. Had the service ramp and the drive-down dock between the H and the I floats. That created a problem with access and where we're going to put the various slips. It was beneficial to be able to talk to the Harbor Commission last night to try to understand better what issues they saw with this, because they're really people who are hands-on users, and that helps us understand that. We met this morning, the team met this morning, talking about those. We're drafting up a memo to RM to modify the alternatives and take a look at a different view. We want to get that conceptual plan pulled together so we can put it in a request for proposal to go to design build teams. I have been talking to 5 different design build teams who are interested in bidding on the job. They range from fairly large organizations to local small contractors who would like to get a piece of this. We're going to put some pretty specific minimum performance requirements in the RFP, and we'll have a concept drawing. And I just want to say right now that what we get back from the design build teams will look somewhat like the concept drawing, but it will not be a replica of the concept drawing. We have some pretty talented design engineers out there, marine engineers out there, and they will do a better job of thinking this thing through than we're going to do with our local resources or with me. I'm not a designer, I'm a project manager. And so we're not going to have all the final answers to this, but we will get final answers in the proposals that come back from the design build teams. And just so we can kind of walk through what we did here, if you have your alternative plan 6 in front of you, one of the things that we were concerned about, greatly concerned about, was the interface between the G float and the North Harbor area and being able to pass vessels through there. We looked at the idea of putting a dog leg or a cant in the G, H, and I floats. Ran that by the Harbor Commission. I don't think that was very well received. Kenny, you can comment as whether you thought it was well received or not, but I think they came back to us and said they want it straight. We had the service float at an angle because we were trying to get as much surface area on the service float where we're going to have cranes, and we will have people coming up with their vessels to load vessels using those cranes. But that tended to impinge on the turning basin that's down by the boat launch area. And Harbor Commission wants us to rotate that back into a normal vertical horizontal basis and connect it to the G float so we don't have angles in there. We put that into our notes to go to R&M, who's been helping us draft these. And that's what we will come back with as an alternative that will be in the RFP. We are still struggling with the issue of spacing of the fairways. We think we have probably a little too much space right now between the K and the J floats where we have the smaller slips. I think, Tony, we said we had what, 55 feet in there? Yeah.
We can spare 5 feet. Yes.
Yeah, we can gain 5 feet that we would be able to allocate there, that space between the I, H, and G floats to make a little more room for the larger boats to move in and out of there. So we're going to revise the drawing you see in 6. If you look at your plan 7, okay, that's where we had the service float and the drive down dock sort of in the middle of the basin. That resolved the clearance issues and the congestion issues with the parking and cars and that sort of thing. But it was also tending to create some real restrictions on ability to get into the service float and use it. And it was taking up slips that we need to have preserved for vessels going forward. So that idea didn't work really well either. Sam, this morning with Tony and I kind of chewed on what we're going to do by way of providing access to a drive-down ramp that will be over near the boat launch area, trying to define that. We will make sure that the proposals we get back from the design build teams will reflect their thinking on what we want to do by way of relieving congestion and queuing people who want to use the drive-down ramp. We think that we want to put some sort of a gate card on the drive-down ramp so that we are not going to have multiple vehicles down there at the same time. That's an idea that we still need to explore and define so we can make sure we have that covered. We are tending to want to put a net mending float out there. I think the consensus of the Harbor Commission was we had proposed a 50 by 30 space for net mending. They wanted something a little bigger. We're trying to find space in the harbor and the location to do that. Fishermen have said they want to be able to get their net mending activities off of the main walks and be on a net float, or at least be able to bypass people who are pushing carts and walking through there so that we don't wind up having to tiptoe to the edge of the main walk while people are trying to get to their vessels. We're working on that issue as well. The other thing that we incorporated recently in our alternatives was to put some T's out on the end of the main floats out there. That provides some additional transit boat parking, and it also helps us get the slip count up in the harbor. We had at one time, I think, promised MARAD 470 slips in the revised. Right now, we're at 443. We need to do some work with R&M and then with our design builders, see if we can't get the slip count up and find some spaces we can incorporate slips for more vessels, and we can get closer to the 470. Part of our process here is as we modify the project, and we are modifying the project, we have to write a white paper to MARAD and tell them what we're changing and why we're changing it. We're not the only people that have projects that are changing. All around the country, people are dealing with cost issues related to their project, and they're having to dial out elements of the project, defer them, and move them on to some future phase of development. That's the approach we're taking to the idea of putting a bulkhead in. We very much wanted to get a bulkhead built for the project, but we just don't have the funds right now to accomplish all of that. We will probably, if we can look at the state legislature and see that 7.5, be able to build part of the bulkhead, but we won't be able to finish all of it. So that's sort of a thumbnail of what we have with the alternatives. We're still refining it. I expect to have an RFP out on the street for this by the middle of May, so that we will then be dealing with design build teams. They'll be asking lots of questions. I'm sure we'll get lots of suggestions and ideas from them, and we'll have to vet those, figure out who can make that happen, and then we'll be able to select somebody, bring a recommendation to the council for their approval. So with that, I'll defer to my esteemed colleague, Robin, and she'll talk about the environmental work we need to do.
Thank you. My name is Robin Reich, and I do environmental permitting, National Environmental Policy Act documents. My company has done a lot of marine work, a lot of cruise ship docks, and very recently we helped with the rebuild of the Crescent Harbor in Sitka. It was a very similar project to yours. They removed all their floats and replaced them. They didn't have a drive down, that's the only thing. It was kind of different. But so we have experience doing this sort of project. I'd like to go through what we went through last night with the Harbor Commission and just tell you some of the environmental approvals that we're working on. One is, because your project is federally funded through MARAD, Maritime Administration, you are required to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. They've decided that your project requires an environmental assessment, which, if you're familiar with NEPA at all, the highest level of NEPA is an environmental impact statement. Then the lesser level is a environmental, a medium level environmental. So we are working on that document right now. It explores all of the, what it does is it talks about the purpose and need for the project. It talks about alternatives that you've looked at, which, and then you go through the potential impacts of the project on the natural and the economic and the social environment. There's that. There's also endangered species in your area, particularly Steller sea lions and humpback. Those are perhaps ones that you would expect in this area now that you vaccinated harbor. But some of the impacts from harbor construction, particularly pile driving noise, has potential to travel out the breakwater. Just a little bit of a potential, because most of the breakwater will keep the noise. And if a humpback happens to be going by, they could be impacted. So we have to go through a process to make sure that the National Marine Service is cool with everything, and that we mitigate the impacts of pile driving so that endangered species. There's also this thing called the Essential Fish Habitat Assessment, and we know that fish are important to everyone. They're also important to National Marine Fisheries Service. They make you go through an assessment that documents, again, potential impacts of your project on fish habitat, look for ways to avoid or minimize or mitigate. It's just a document, sort of a check the box type process. The bigger parts of this are dealing with potential harassment, or what they define as take of critters, particularly sea otters or potentially sea lions or harbor seals that might be in the harbor during construction. You can get an approval to be able to harass critters, but you have to get that approval to be able to do that, which means that you want construction to keep going while there's a animal hanging nearby. You have to get an authorization. And so we work with this project to get that authorization. The process requires that you describe the project, describe what's going on, meaning how long you're driving piles, and then how you will mitigate impacts to mammals. You're allowed to harass them. When you get this approval, you're allowed to harass them, but you can take them, or you can cause them to get upset or whatever. You're not allowed to hurt them. The only way that always shut down. So there's 2 incidental harassment authorizations that you need to get. One from one agency, Fish and Wildlife Service, for the harassment of sea otters, and whole another agency, that's the National Marine Fisheries Service, for the potential harassment. We would think sea lions and harbor seals, potentially other. If we'll go through the analysis, but would determine whether we want to give the construction contractor the availability to be able to take other critters that might be outside the harbor passing. There's no potential for that, and then just happen to come by, we just shut down and get it. There is an approval, a separate approval for any work that you do, anything that the Corps of Engineers passed. And I don't deal with the changes to those features, which would be breakwater or one of the things. But what the Corps needs is they need that environmental assessment that we're working on for MARAD to be able to do their action, which allows you to work. So what we would do is that environmental assessment that we're creating for MARAD would also work for the project to be able to mess with it or put it in the past. Finally, there's another approval by the Corps, which is placing of piles and any fill into the waters of the U.S. That's actually a permit, and then there's another permit from the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation for keeping water quality. Lots of approvals happening. The good thing is that it's not get one, then get your next one, get your next one. We're working on all of them at the same time, and a lot of the information that's done for one is for all. For example, the project description will be the same. I think that's how it to go. It's essentially talking about the schedule. And our schedule would be, if I can remember this correctly, getting done with the environmental assessment June, taking care of that environmental by June or so. So all of the applications would be done by June. Then we would move to work with environmental. So the end of 2022 is our goal for getting all the environmental stuff done. That leaves us a lot of flexibility the following fall. Holds us up.
And we incorporated Robin's timelines into our overall project schedule so that we can understand when we'll have the environmental compliance pieces done. And we're tying that into the funding for the project so that it all comes together. While we will have the environmental compliance issues, I think, tackled pretty successfully by the end of 22, I would like to be able to start procurement and fabrication before that. We have a little bit of juggling to do, work the money around to make that happen, but I think we can do that. We also have to pay for design activities while we're doing the environmental compliance. That, cost will be identified in the responses in the proposals we get from the design build teams. So we would need to be able to fund that and try to put together a cash flow that reflects the available resources to us as well as the project needs. And they're not going to be parallel. We're going to need to find some additional ways to bridge things through. We're working on that. We will also continue to work on making sure that we have a project that fits the resources that are available to us. If we only have $40 million and not $42 million, then we've got to take some pieces out of the project in order to stay within the cap budget that we've got. And that will be real apparent to the design build teams when they propose. They will know kind of what our maximum is as we go forward. Right now, if we were to put out the RFP, which we potentially could do, all we could do would be 32,640,000. And that probably means we have to cut too many things out of the project. If we can be successful with the legislature and we can get back close to $40 million, there are a lot of things we get to add back in from where we are right now. But we do have a schedule that includes the environmental work, it includes the design work, and includes the procurement fabrication as well as a start of construction in the fall of 23. And I wish I could show it to you, but.
I think everybody got this PowerPoint emailed to them. Tom and Ann and Melina, you're probably looking at it. We skipped around on a lot of slides because we're just winging it. So I think if you guys have any questions, we're here to answer them as best we can.
Anybody online? We'll start with you guys. Baylor? Meyer, have any comments, questions?
No questions. Just thank you guys for the presentation. I was able to follow along by that many pages. Really appreciate all the time I've gone through this. Thanks.
Councilmember Schaefer, any comments, questions?
Hi, yeah, I do have one question. Thanks for sending the presentation ahead of time. So during the previous update, it had seemed that Merid wasn't necessarily going to be very flexible with reducing aspects of the project or working in phases because of the increased cost. But it sounds like in this update, you mentioned that we can submit a paper that outlines the changes we'd like to make to the scope of the project, and then we'll be able to scale it back. Is that correct? And do the changes need to be approved by MARA, or is it more of a notification, like letting them know?
Hey, this is Curtis. Nothing has fundamentally changed in that regard since the previous update. If we make any substantial changes that alter project outcomes that we suggested we would accomplish in the raise application, we will have to submit a white paper, which is what Mark referred to. You can make less consequential changes as part of entering into the grant agreement with sufficient justification if they don't alter project outcomes, which is a fine line to walk. We would like to not submit a white paper if we can help it. Once we do that, MARAD retains the right to rescind awarded funds, which is why we would really like to not go down that route if we can manage to not do so. Mark, do you have anything to add on that?
I think the thought here is that MARAD wants to award the funds. We need to be in compliance with the grant application to the best we can, knowing that the price of steel, price of diesel, price of many things that go into construction are going up at a pretty regular rate. MARAD knows that because they've got a lot of other projects on their books too. I'm not promising, but I think MARAD wants to award us the full $20 million. We need to help them with that justification. That's what the white paper does for us.
Did that answer your question, Councilmember Schaefer?
Yeah, thank you. So we didn't include the bulkhead in this phase of the project. Like that would be something that would have to be included in a white paper.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Baylor, are you with us still?
Yeah. No, I've taken how long. No question. Thanks everybody for doing the hard work.
Vice Mayor Sherman?
No questions.
Councilmember Jones?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you guys coming tonight, and it sounds like you heard the Harbor Commission's input well, and I appreciate that. One thing that I didn't hear you touch on, doesn't mean you don't have it on your notes, just wanted to make sure to reiterate it, was another concern that was brought up by members of the fleet and the Harbor Commission was the space between G and H float being a little too tight there. I know you mentioned K and J and some of the other floats, but specifically those two were, that was brought up multiple times.
I think that's where the 5 feet we think we can save between J and K, we can allocate that between G and H.
Okay.
I'm not telling you that's what the specific geometry is going to be, but
Right.
I think that's the step we're going toward.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I would. Do you mean J and I? Or because J and K is pretty tight already.
J and K is pretty tight, but if you look at the North Harbor area, we've got spacing for similar size slips that are at 45 feet.
Okay.
Here we've got, I think, 52 feet. So we can find 5 feet there pretty easily and still be consistent with what you're offering in the North Harbor area. That's our basis for comparison right here.
Okay. Yeah, and I look forward to seeing the next reiterate. There's going to be another reiteration.
That's why we're sending the memo off to R&M and let them do their dance.
Cool. Thank you.
Councilmember Carpenter?
Thanks, I don't have any questions. Thank you. Thanks for the rundown.
Hey, yeah, thanks for coming and reporting to us. Appreciate it.
Yes, I do. I have extra.
No, I was just,
This is two-sided.
is it the right two?
You can have these too.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. You can take those.
Okay, Manager Howarth, was that? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Councilman Baylor. So if we're moving on, I have a comment about the rest of the manager's report.
Okay, yeah, were you done with your report, Helen? Are you ready for questions?
Yes, ready for questions.
Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Baylor.
Yeah, the last item under the capital project, housing, is that first sentence, increase housing in Cordova at the top. community priority and staff focus. This dovetails what I've been saying for a couple of years. The city does have residential lots, but they're being brought forward from the city planner and the planning commission to build garages for storage. Affordable housing begins with affordable lots. That's why I've been saying for a while that any more of these residential lots that the city has should be designated for housing units and not for storage. So I hope everyone on council would read that paragraph, understand it, and also that would go to the planning commissioner and the city planner and understand our needs. So thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for the manager? Go ahead, Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, I guess on the topic of housing, is there any city council members that are, in your report you mentioned that you have a working committee? I was wondering, is that something that a city council member could be included on, or?
Yeah, certainly. Right now, it's made up of staff of NVE and city staff. It hasn't yet elevated to a place where decision makers are in. We're just kind of exploring with each other what we have, what our needs are, where there's a nexus, and also exploring what kind of resources we potentially would need to make things happen. And I think there is definitely that next higher level conversation, but we're doing the groundwork to see what the other communities are doing, incentives, disincentives, what is available. For instance, when we go to do the infrastructure funding symposium on Monday, Tuesday, what's available for city. And we'll bring all of that back to both the decision makers at MBE and the city, and we'll figure out some solutions, which I hope will work for both entities and get us further along the path.
Okay, well, I really appreciate you guys looking into it and working on it. And if you get to the point where you need volunteers for a committee of some sort, I would volunteer as tribute. So
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody
This is
else?
Councilmember Meyer.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Meyer.
I thought I would just add a little to the housing committee, just kind of as disclosure and add to the conversation about it. MVE also invited MVE tribal members to join in that committee, so I did volunteer my name and on that as a tribal member. And we just had one meeting, and I would like to say that it was a really good introduction. The city did a really good job bringing up a lot of points, and I think just about everything got discussed. It was just an initial meeting, and it is being set up by NVE and the city, and it seems like they're going to be working really well together to get the good information to everybody.
And I want to add that in addition to that committee that Melina was just describing, NVE leadership and key city leadership are meeting now once a month to identify ways we can work together on key projects that will advance city priorities. So our next meeting is on the 13th of April, and I will certainly report back to all of you on how we're moving forward.
Thank you. Anybody else, council, have questions for the manager? Okay, last chance, last call. Okay, we'll move on to the clerk's report.
I just have two quick things, kind of mostly for the people out there. The appeal period closes Friday, so last day to get an appeal in on your property assessment is Friday, the 8th. And then I sent council kind of a wordy email about the upcoming state election, which, you know, may be somewhat confusing and may take some education for voters to understand. So people can call me or call the front desk, and mostly I'm just kind of directing you to the state's website, which I think has it explained pretty well, and then we'll be updating it as we get closer. So if anybody needs to call me about that, and I can work you through it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Questions for the clerk? Hearing none, we'll move along then. Correspondence, we have one letter or notification from the DNR review of the mariculture in Simpson Bay. Comments on that? Hearing none, then we'll move on to ordinances and resolutions. We have resolution 04-2210, a resolution of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, reinvesting $417,752.45 of FY 2020 investment earnings from the General Reserve Fund, Permanent Fund, back into the Permanent Fund.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve Resolution 04-22-10.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilmember Jones.
I am really happy to see this and appreciate staff bringing it to us. I think this is the right thing to be doing with the earnings from that fund.
Councilmember Sherman.
Yeah, I agree. We discussed this at length, and so I'm in favor of it.
Okay, Councilmember Carpenter.
I don't have any comments.
Okay, online, Councilmember Baylor.
Yeah, I support it and thank the mayor and former city councilman, Mr. Allison. He's the one that kind of brought this forward. So, yes, I do support it.
Thank you. Councilmember Schaefer.
Yep, I'm also in support of this.
And Councilmember Meyer.
Yep, I'm also in support of it and echo the comments support.
Okay, any last comments? Sounds like everybody was in favor of this. Just a voice vote, I guess, is all that's required for resolution. Let's do a roll call.
Yeah, it's up to you. Okay.
Anytime we're spending money, I prefer to do roll calls whenever we're spending money.
But we're not spending.
Well, we're moving.
But it's
We're
involving
moving.
money.
I understand. I agree. So on resolution 42210, Kathy Sherman,
Yes.
Jeff Gard is absent, Ken Jones,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
Kristen Carpenter,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
and Melina Meyer.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I was indeed glad to see that before us. I think anytime we need to spend money out of there, we're certainly, none of us are against spending it for the right reasons, but it needs to be right reason, ultra unanimous. So appreciate that. Resolution 04-2211, a resolution of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, authorizing the city manager to enter into a sole source contract with Yukon Equipment, Inc. for the purchase of a 2006 used Vactor 2100 truck for the City of Cordova.
Mayor Allison, so moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve resolution 04-2211. Councilmember
Yes.
Sherman.
I just wanted to say that I had some questions about this, and a lot of my questions were answered in the memo that staff provided, which I actually learned some things that I didn't even know vac trucks could do. And I like the fact that even though we're purchasing a used one, it's a good use of our funding, and we're keeping the old one to help with some other issues. So I'm all in favor of this.
Was it
Yeah.
Carpenter?
My comments would echo that. Councilmember Sherman's.
Okay, online, Councilmember Schaefer.
I'm also in support, and I agree. I feel like I learned a lot reading the memo. I guess my only question is, it discusses that it's like been well maintained and it'll just be used with the sewer department, which will help it extend the life of the truck versus doing both sewer and streets. But it's still a 2006 truck, and our current one is 1999. So I'm just wondering, if it, what the like lifespan of a vehicle like this is, if our current one is a 99.
Sam's going to speak.
Hello? That is a great question, and it really depends on maintenance and care. And one of the biggest reasons to keep streets away from that truck. The use that streets does sucking out rocks and gravel is very hard on it. We will continue to look for funding to get a new one, and then we'll give streets the 2006 one, and we'll just keep trying to do it that way. But a new vac truck's $460,000. They're just super expensive. I guess to answer, I'm not sure what the lifespan is. I would hope at least another 10 to 15 years, but I can't promise that.
Did that answer your question, Councilmember Schaefer? Or are you the one we lost? Councilmember Meyer, any questions?
No questions, thanks.
Councilmember Baylor?
Yeah, I support it. And I think I said at the last meeting, I'll say it again. When's the last time we had any trouble with our potable water or sewer systems? These guys and gals do an excellent job. So if they need it, let's get it to them.
Councilmember Schaefer, I think we lost you and got you back maybe. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know. I just got disconnected. Yeah, thanks, Sam.
Hey, Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, I guess I have a quick question. How much money is in the depreciation fund that we're going to use to buy this?
I believe 700, maybe 8.
So they've got the money to buy it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But I don't want to spend $470,000, or I shouldn't say, we don't want to spend $470,000 out of that, and because we need some wastewater treatment plant work. Hopefully we'll get a grant for.
Okay, it's everybody. Anybody else have anything else?
Do we need a budget amendment to make this purchase? I mean, this is just a resolution. Do we need to get anything from the finance?
No, we will do a one-time budget amendment for many things that have been incurred and corrected for the first 6 months. So you will get a budget amendment, including for the audit that we just approved that was 25 plus, more than we budgeted, 30 plus, and a few other things. So, but if you approve, it assumes that the budget is approved with those increases.
Thank you.
I use my prerogative as the chair here for just one comment. I guess if we're running these as enterprise funds, then now we're spending enterprise fund money so that we can give the general fund streets a piece of our equipment. And I think at some point in time we need to, if we're going to run these enterprise funds as enterprise funds, we need to be charging for their use or selling that equipment, or I guess I go back to the old. We had a manager at North Pacific once that we were arguing about whether Kodiak spent it or Cordova spent money on something, and it's this pocket, that pocket is the same pair of pants. Ultimately it's Cordova's money, but we've been trying to make the enterprise funds work as business enterprise funds, and this is not really doing that. So But sounds like everybody's in favor of this. Can we get another roll call on that if there's no
Yep.
objection?
Okay, on Resolution 42211. Ken Jones.
Yes.
Jeff Guard is absent. Melina Meyer.
Yes.
Kathy Sherman.
Yes.
Tom Baylor.
Yes.
Kristen Carpenter.
Yes.
Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Item 14 on our agenda, Resolution 0422-12, a resolution of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, approving the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Cordova and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Local Union number 1547. You get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. I think staff is prepared to do a presentation. Is that
Yeah,
what we're after?
we're certainly here to answer questions, but I want to bring Laura up because she was a big part of the negotiations. The IBEW met last Thursday and approved the agreement that's in front of you. It's been a long process. We started our negotiations last October, and I will say that we all agreed that negotiating over Zoom is something we want to avoid in the future because it removes the need for expediency. You're not in a room, you're not trying to get her done before the flight leaves at the end of the week. So hopefully next year, which hard to believe, but a year from now, we will be negotiating the next contract. This is a 2-year contract. And I want Laura to go over some of the key points that we negotiated, and then certainly we're available to answer any questions. But at this point in time, we're really happy with the agreement. I think the union and staff had a really good negotiation, and again, the bargaining unit did approve this contract. But now it is not going into play until you, as the governing body, makes a motion to approve, which I hope you will. And I will turn it over to Laura.
Thank you and good evening. I don't want to take up much time talking. I'd rather be able to address questions if there aren't any. What I can highlight is, even though it took us till now to get it ratified and approved, we were presumptive and built everything into the budget. So what we ultimately came out with in terms of a contract has already been built into the 22 budget, so doesn't require any changes. A lot of the changes that we made were administrative. We're tightening up processes and procedures that we were already performing as a city, benefits or ways of handling processes with the employees that really hadn't been documented and formalized. And so we made sure that that was done. We looked at changing benefits that wouldn't necessarily impact the immediate city economy. For example, one of the requests that was worked into the proposal was to increase the annual leave accrual amounts to match what's already offered in city code. So it wasn't anything that wasn't precedent setting. Certainly when you're adding leave, it can potentially have an impact down the road, but it doesn't affect our day-to-day operational budgets. So we tried to look at creative ways to ensure that our employees have incentives to retain their employment with us while also being able to meet the needs of this budget. COVID certainly had an impact and all. And we were really appreciative that the union and its members were willing to recognize that it's unusual circumstances and actually ratify a contract that doesn't approve any COLA. So they essentially, other than longevity increases for each year that they stay getting recognized for that extension in service time and commitment to the city, they have agreed to keep those steps flat for the 2 years, which is primarily why we have the 2-year increase. But I think a lot of thanks and kudos goes to IBEW and its members for willing to work with us. That is an unusual acknowledgement, I think, and it speaks to the teamwork, I think, that was shown as we were going through negotiations. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
So the maker of the motion, Councilmember Sherman?
I've read through it and I've had all my questions answered over the last couple of days, and I have to say I agree. I'm just really pleased. First of all, I'm glad it's a 2-year contract. I'm happy that we're kind of back on track with a timeline, and kudos to you guys for building it into the budget, because one of my questions was, where's the fiscal note that goes with this contract? And there isn't one. So I'm in favor of it, and knowing that the union has approved it. I personally, as a former employee, have seen some changes in here that I am happy to see.
Councilmember Jones?
No comment.
Councilmember Carpenter?
I'm new to all of this, and so I don't have that much backstory in the whole process, but I guess I just wanted to ask, and it seems kind of obvious, but the things like the grievance procedure, it's similar for the union employees as for the non-union? I mean, it must be the same.
It is. Are you talking about union members or your exempt?
Well, I mean, is it
department
the same
heads
for both groups?
It is not. City code determines the procedures for any of the non-exempt. So the department heads, those that work directly for Helen or that are in supervisory positions, they're similar, but they're not exactly the same. And of course, in negotiations, those processes can change with each contract.
Oh.
And just to be clear, all the details in this contract are good for 2 years. And then potentially through negotiations, anything written into the contract can be and is subject to change. So back to your question, exempt employees, we do have code and we follow that, and we have a process, and it's very clear, and there's no negotiations involved with exempt employee compensation, benefits, or other things. But the union contract is totally negotiated. And it does get down to wordsmithing at times too. We did a bit of that. So, yeah.
Councilmember Meyer, online.
No, just one question. Thanks.
Councilmember Schaefer?
I also don't have any additional questions. Thanks so much for the additional information, though.
And Councilmember Baylor?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, sounds like everybody's discussed this, so can we get one more roll call vote, please?
Yes, on Resolution 42212. Melina Meyer.
Yes.
Tom Baylor.
Yes.
Jeff Guard is absent. Ken Jones.
Aye.
Kathy Sherman.
Yes.
Kristen Carpenter.
Yes.
Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura and Helen, for your efforts there, and appreciate it. No unfinished business, so we're on to new and miscellaneous business, the discussion regarding communications with local industry on the current Cordova COVID status. We wanted to discuss this because I think most of us have been involved with or have received copies of the industry letter from the state to the seafood processors and just basically saying that they're not going to have any restrictions statewide regarding this. In fact, they're toning down some of their testing and other things. They're still working on their final list on that, but there's been some concern with the industry on what, if anything, the local community is going to do, or how it would be viewed if they, for example, went back to their annual preseason picnics, and whether or not they were open or closed campuses. And so it was suggested that maybe the letter from the city would help clarify that you know, I think we all know around this table that we've decided to follow the state guidelines, and we don't have any of our own in particular, but I think they just want to hear that from an official source. So that's the discussion, and I guess the discussion should include, does that letter come from staff, from the chamber, from the mayor and city council? Who should that be, and who should it be directed to? Are we just talking the seafood processors, or, you know, there's a lot of other support businesses that do preseason things as well. Shoreside used to do it all the time, and Cordova Outboard and Napa and all of those places. So anyway, so I guess it's open for discussion. I didn't want to write a letter as the mayor without, you know, I'm supposed to be writing letters at the request of council. So I would like to hear council's opinions on that before I put your thoughts on paper without your hearing your thoughts. So, Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think I was one of the people who asked you to have this on the agenda. And I feel strongly that a letter should come from the mayor and city council urging a return to normalcy in the industry, and prioritizing mental health, and returning to in-person gathering like these events, and also returning to open campuses for our seafood processors. They're very cherished and valuable members of our community, and I would like to see them be able to freely join our community again this summer. Many businesses in the community have approached me asking about this, because that's a pretty big sector of customer base that they've lost the last few years with those closed campuses. And I just think it's really important for us to get these campuses reopened. And in my talks with seafood processors, they sounded like they were hesitant to do anything without hearing from the city first. So I would just, I guess, urge council to support this. I think it's pretty important.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that? Councilmember Sherman?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Elson. So I do, and I agree in many ways. I guess this is the new normal. I just walked in here tonight with a mask, and so I'm still comfortable wearing my mask where I choose to wear my mask. But I think this is going to be going on forever, so we do need to get back. And I know the importance of the cannery and the seasonal visitors to the business community. And I mean, I saw the effect as just a member of the Historical Society. So I appreciate that. I think the letter should come from the city and the council. I think we should stress, maybe have a little sentence or two guidance from the medical community. Let everybody know it's a self-decision, you know, encourage vaccinations if that's what the medical community wants to do, or just say masks are a personal choice, because I still, you know, and people I think in this community have been very gracious about mask wearing. I mean, I just came from the South where they are not gracious about it. So I do appreciate the fact that I can walk into the grocery store and, you know, see my friend who's not masked, but still have a conversation and carry on and move forward with life. So.
Comments? Kristen?
Sure. I agree with everything that's been said before. I do think there's some pretty basic things, though, that wouldn't hurt to reiterate, like stay up to date with COVID vaccines and get tested if you have symptoms. I mean, it's basic CDC guidelines. I think, yes, everybody wants to see things open up, but I think we do have to keep reminding folks there are things you can do to be as safe as possible, and I'd like to see that included. But yeah, I think in terms of the impact on the local businesses and making sure that people can move around and be part of the community, that we are in that, I mean, we're all here with no masks on. We're in that phase, so.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yeah, I would agree with what has been said, and I think that the medical team should be involved in the letter, just adding things in there about that. But yeah, I think it's time to do that and look up to more normalcy and just be kind to one another. Some people are going to be wearing masks for their own personal reasons, and not everyone's going to know what those reasons happen to be. And others can go on without wearing masks, and yeah, that's our new normal. So I think something from council and the mayor would be good.
Hey, Councilmember Schaefer?
Thank you. Yeah, I also agree with most of what's been said, and I also agree that having a note from our medical team included would be a good idea. Just, yeah, emphasizing that we do have tools now. We've got tests, we've got vaccines, we've got our masks. So, yeah, I'm in support, and that we should also emphasize or include, yeah, the basic tools that we have now.
Okay, and Councilmember Baylor?
Yes, I agree. And I think keeping the tone of the letter, or if you want to wear a mask, it's a personal choice. And I don't have a problem with that. I think that would be the way to go with it, so I support it.
He sounds good. And yeah, I would certainly want to stress that each company is going to have different comfort levels with their policies. So I just want to stress that it's each business is certainly welcome to have their own policies for their comfort level, but we would encourage them to come back to the community and be a full participating part, and we'll stress that. And I can work with the staff and the medical teams from Alonka and CCMC to make sure that their concerns are addressed as well. So, okay, we will get that out, and I think the key is for the processors, but we've got other business too. So we'll work with staff, and maybe we'll get the chamber to post or to distribute the letter as well once we get that worked out. So that'll be good. So thank you for that direction. Now we're up to council election of a vice mayor. Vice Mayor Sherman's term has officially expired tonight, so we're looking for we can do this any number of ways. In the past, we've opened it up for nominations and voted, so I'd be looking for a nomination of somebody for vice mayor for the next year.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, I'd like to move to nominate Tom Baylor if he's willing.
Moved for Tom Baylor.
I'll second that.
And seconded is
Since he put me in this place.
Tom Baylor willing to do that if elected?
Yes, I am. I can see there's less vacation for Tom Baylor.
Any other nominations or?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move to close nominations.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there objection to closing nominations? Hearing none, we've got a nomination of Tom Baylor for vice mayor for the next year. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Welcome aboard, Tom, and thank you, ex-Vice Mayor Sherman, for your service the last year. Sure. Appreciated working with you, and you're not going anywhere. So, Welcome aboard, Tom. Okay, council concurrence of the mayor's appointment to the Historical Preservation Commission. We had Christy Mogg, I think, right? That's how you pronounce her name? From the Forest Service. I think when we discussed this a meeting or two ago, somebody threw that name out there as a new person to town that might be qualified for this position, and she has put her name in for this. As you've read in the packet, it's pretty strict criteria for this particular seat on the Historic Preservation Commission. So I would like to appoint Christy Mogg as the member on the Historical Preservation Commission. Looking for a motion to concur with the mayor's appointment.
Move to concur.
I move. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Christy Mogg. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Welcome, Christy. Pending agenda. TIP list, calendar, elected and appointed officials list. Anything on that pending agenda we need to add or subtract? We need to put on the May 4th agenda, the ski club has the ski hill has a request. They want to come give a presentation and request for some funding. So we'll put that on the May 4th agenda. That was their request. And I think they will have a couple people ready to give a presentation at that time. Anything else on there, Councilmember Jones?
Yeah, I don't want to, I guess, step on staff's toes, but one of the things that I'm passionate about is obviously housing and property tax incentives and that type of thing. So I would like to see us in the future, when staff is ready, to have a workshop on that. And sooner rather than later, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that, I've talked to Helen about that already. They're working on that. I just don't want us to, meet monthly and 24 months from now, finally be to the point where we can actually do some things. I think there's some things that we can do now while we work on land issues and stuff, to where we can actually do some things like tax incentives and those kind of things. So we need a workshop to discuss, to throw out those ideas that maybe the committees are looking at or maybe not. So yeah, I would like to see that on an agenda. Shortly, we'll get that on the agenda when staff is ready. Anything else?
Yes, that's Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I see number 8 gets maybe on the next agenda. We still need to resolve this sales tax discussion. Like one of the questions asked last time, can a contractor come in and pay for 6-8 months worth of rooms and then just beat that low tax cap? And people come in with bed and breakfast who would buy the groceries and claim it's the bed and breakfast. We never got the answers to those things. We didn't clean them up. And I would remind everybody that we're running our budget on deficit, if not through government funding. So we need to get these things straightened out. And if contractors can come in and have a loophole in their tax cap, we need to do it now before the construction season begins.
I think staff was also working on that. Were you, Helen?
Yes, and again, the way I work is to try to get as much information as possible so that you guys can make informed decisions. There's a lot of research that we are actively looking at. We will be bringing things. It won't be 24 months. It won't be 12 months. But with our capacity at the moment and many big projects on our plate, we perhaps are not moving as fast as council would like, but I want to assure you that we are focused on it. We are actively looking at it. We are actively getting things together. I have 2 meetings next week with folks in Anchorage to help me understand directions that we could potentially pursue. I want to cross off the February 22 date because obviously we missed that deadline. I don't have a date for you yet, and I'm a little bit reluctant to put something forward other than to say it's a priority, it's a commitment, working on it, and I'll try to move a little faster.
Yeah. So we'll bring that up when it's as soon as possible. On that, I think that sometimes part of what we had talked about previously was getting information from our partners in business around what they're currently doing, and I think maybe we just need to decide how we want it done and make that very clear and get that out to our business owners. I want to stress, and I will stress my entire term while I'm sitting here, that we are partners with all of these businesses. We're not just the tax collectors. We're a business partner to everybody. Some bigger percentages than others, but at least 6% with all of them. So we need to work like that. So Helen, you had one more?
I just want to share one thing that we are doing. There has been concern by the business community that the methodology that they're having to use, the reporting that they're having to do to track folks who use the exemptions is onerous. I guess at one point in time, there was a rebate of some kind to help pay for the expense that businesses incurred to provide us with that paperwork. Our staff is revising the paperwork, hearing those concerns. We have a meeting scheduled at the end of the month with the business community, go over those forms and to understand what the issues are and try to resolve them. We've heard everything from folks saying, you know what, why don't you just have people submit their own their own receipts to city and leave us out of it. We charge the tax, people can get a rebate from city. We've had that conversation come up. We've had just make the forms easier, don't make us do them monthly, So we were going to have a working session with the business community. We'll be engaging the chamber and making sure we have people in the room, and we are actively working on forms that, again, we're working with code, existing code. It could be that we want to do a code change, but at this moment in time, we're looking at what can we do to make it easier on the business community, comply with the code, and provide the city with the taxes it needs. We're busy with that right at the moment, and we will bring back recommendations, but we are engaging the business community.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on?
Thanks, Allison.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just one more point, and I appreciate the complex issue, and you're going to need more time, but I think the one single point there is, can an outside contractor come in here and through a loophole not pay his fair share of tax when they're paying for housing? That should be pretty straightforward to answer, and if the answer is yes, then it should be something that we could change right away, sooner rather than later, because again, we're going to have a lot of construction coming in the next year. So I'd like to see us address that. The other issues, we can get as we get time, but I'd like to see us collect that outside money. Thanks.
So we will bring something, if that is direction of council, that you want to look at the tax cap, and we can certainly identify under what circumstances people qualify or don't. There could very well be loopholes, but we would have to do a code change to plug those loopholes. So it's not an easy process, unfortunately, but for the next meeting, we will commit to having the code and interpretation of the code so that you guys could identify the places that you want to find corrections.
Thank you. Councilman Sherman?
Mayor Allison, the only thing I saw on pending agenda is next meeting is a work session with school board,
Okay,
I think.
Well, I highlighted it, hoping you guys
It's-
would comment if you want to or not. I feel like we had set that a while ago, and is it useful because I think they're starting to work on their own budget?
They are.
That is kind of why I tried to put them at a time when we were working on budget and at a time when they were working on budget.
yeah, they should be working on their official budget now, I would think. It has to be approved by
June.
May, I think, for them. Sometime in May or June, they have to submit it to the state, so,
I'd just like to see us reach out to the school board, see if we can have a work session. I think twice a year is not going to kill us, and it's a good thing to do. So
Okay, I will do that. Oh,
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. While we're on the topic of joint city council and commission work sessions, I would like to see us add a Harbor Commission joint work session at some point when staff deems it necessary. Just because we got a big project going on is probably a good thing to do.
Yes, I
adding it to pending agenda? Are you
Well-
picking a date, anybody, or
maybe for when the team says they have a big
Okay.
update for
Okay.
us.
is that good?
Yeah, just, I don't want to put a date on it, just when the team deems it necessary, then I think it's a good thing for us to do in the future.
Yeah, I think the Harbor Commission needs to stay involved with this project as much as they can, and they have been, the team has been meeting with the Harbor Commission. But yeah, it's the harbor is what we're spending all this money on, so certainly doesn't hurt to meet once in a while or to invite them to our meeting for a workshop prior to our meeting.
Yeah, as far as timing, maybe like before we pick our design build finalist or something, have a workshop right before that meeting or something,
Yeah, that RFP thought mid-May, and then it's how long is it out there for? 30, 45 days, something like that. So it'd be July before.
Right in the middle of fishing season, awesome.
Harbor Commission doesn't meet too much in the summertime, but we'll figure out a time, and certainly they're invited anytime we're just like everybody else. They're invited to our meetings, and we're invited to theirs. So, but it doesn't hurt to get together in an official capacity once in a while.
Can I say one more thing about the
Yeah.
school board one? If I get in touch with them and 420 doesn't work, I mean, what's our May going to be like with this council?
420, do you see?
420 is the date that I have on this agenda, but yeah, I know.
I'm not sure if that's a good day.
Maybe it's a very good day. Is May okay? I mean, I guess we can go into May if that's preferable to them.
I think we can, yeah, whatever's good for them.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything specific that we need to discuss with them in particular, but it's certainly always good to get together so at least we know we're communicating with each other and not off doing our own thing. So, anything else? Last chance, last call.
Well, I just wanted to say also that on the lists of elected and appointed, if you see Chris Iannazzoni, it got elected by the CCMC board,
Okay.
so he's on there, and he's on here. So I thought I put him on.
He is.
Oh, he is.
Yeah.
I forgot on mine, and then I printed yours. Okay, just wanted to tell everybody that.
And I think we'll have a few proclamations. We got some other things for the agenda that we'll put on there that
Yes, I have one done.
we'll talk about, so. Okay. Audience participation. Robert Beadle, come on up.
Thank you. Robert Beadle, 609 Spruce Street. Addressing. I was at a meeting a while back and they talked about it. I was great to hear it going. But as I'm making an order, I have an invalid address. How we doing on it? Where we at?
It's definitely in process. We're in the final stages. It's going to take some time to make adjustments. When you say invalid address, you mean from like Amazon or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to take a bit of time to get those finalized and then have them actually export out into the broader world where addresses are recognized. But we are very, very, very close to the end of that process. I'm just doing some final fine tuning. Yeah.
I know it's going to be a bummer for some people having to change, and it's probably a lot of paperwork for them too, but by the end of the summer or sooner?
I don't know, Sam, do you have, our hope is that we'll have the addresses set, and then there's a next step for E911 and other things. But we're really close. I think it'll be before the end of the summer that we'll have those numbers. And then there's going to be a process with some addresses that have to be changed and tweaked. I think we all know that there's some addresses that are on the wrong direction of the uphill and the downhill and,
Not
whatever.
chronological and, yeah.
Yeah, and then we're also identifying for first responders driveways so that the addresses actually line up with the GPS to a place where first responders can actually find the address. So there's a lot of information, but we're really pleased with our contractor that does this on a national basis and has worked a lot in Alaska, and it's going to be good.
So would it come out in phases maybe?
Probably not.
One and all?
I mean, we don't have that many addresses in Cordova. Yeah. So when we get them done, we will just get them out. But there'll be a lot of communication as soon as we have a final map and know what we're doing. The community's going to know. There'll be a lot of opportunity.
See where we live?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's
Yeah.
There was one of the postal workers that told me just to use their post office address if a vendor won't ship it to your street address, and the post office one always works. So
Yeah, unfortunately, the people that do UPS and the post office know who you are, so they're fantastic there. But it would just,
Yeah, it's well on its way. Don't have an exact timeline, but there will be broad communication when we do. Yeah.
I was just excited when I heard it was
Yeah.
in progress. So thank you.
thank you. Anybody else? All that's left is staff. So moving on then to council comments. We'll start online. Councilmember Meyer.
Yeah, thank you for the meeting. There was a lot of really great information. The packet had a lot of good information, even written down. Really appreciate that. And yeah, addressing is really exciting. It's a funny thing to be excited about, but it's exciting that is underway and going. So thanks, everyone.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Yeah, just thank you so much for the harbor presentation and also the other presentations from staff. Big thanks to Helen for managing the union contract negotiations. And yeah, thanks everyone.
Vice Mayor Baylor.
Yeah, thanks for that harbor update, and welcome, Mayor Allison and Councilman Jones and Kristen. We repeat customers here, so you both bring on another perspective. It'll be helpful on the harbor project and others. Appreciate having you. Communication from the manager. I think we've discussed it between ourselves several times. For me, another example of that tonight is the tax cap. You're working on it. Another example is addressing. You're working at it, but you will not find an email from the city manager to anybody on council stating that these are projects in progress. We're working on them. That would really be helpful. We spend too much time asking you questions during the meetings that could have been answered with just simple emails that we're working on this. We'll get the information to you. I know you're busy, but a quick memo every now and then, once a week, would be very helpful.
Understood and heard. Thank you very much.
I look back, we had city managers that found time to go out and load sand on the street. We had city managers that would watch the child play volleyball in the middle of the day in another state. I think we've got a city manager now that comes in and works 8, 10, 12 hours a day, but I hope you can find time to kind of keep us more informed on what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Carpenter.
I wanted to thank the city manager and staff for the work on the collective bargaining agreement. I think that probably took a lot of bird dogging and a lot of focus, so thanks for getting that done. It's great to see a good agreement. And yeah, anyway, and thanks for the welcoming and happy to be here.
Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming tonight. And yeah, if I seem like a squeaky wheel on some subjects, it's no affront to any staff members or council members. Just figure that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and I'm really good at that. So, yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Sherman.
So I had a couple things. One, I really wanted to applaud attendance at the funding symposium. Glad we're taking more than one person. I've tried to do that by myself. It's very difficult, and there's a lot of funds to be gained from the knowledge there. So happy about that. Glad we went out to bid for the audit. That was a good practice. I hope we continue to do that for all of our services. I want to encourage everybody to make some testimony for the harbor for Friday. It's easy to do. I did mine today. I made my husband do one, and then we sent it out to all some other friends. So it's easy to do, and it's really important to our community, and the more people that speak out, the better. I also wanted to really give kudos to the staff and to the manager. There's a lot of stuff getting done, and it's really exciting. And I mean, the harbor project just to beyond belief. But then to think that we negotiated an IBEW contract successfully for 2 years. We've got a new company for our audit, which we've been bugging for. Things like addressing are happening. There's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes that we don't know about. And personally, I don't need to know about it every single day. But I'm just really excited about the things that we're moving forward with. It's real encouraging, really encouraging.
Okay. We don't need an executive session, correct? So one more item.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. No objection. We will be adjourned.